Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports. I'm the head pollster, Mark Mitchell, and tonight we have something new. A reality check for somebody we haven't really talked that much about, to be honest with you. You know, they've been charging away for 8 years, building a new platform, redefining the Republican Party into something focused on getting Americans more of what they want. They came in strong, but it's all starting to fall apart. It's all coming crashing down. Donald Trump's job approval rating is plunging. No, I'm just kidding. We're talking about Democrats again. We're going to crap on Democrats because Donald Trump is doing absolutely fine. By my reckoning, I think we have 5 more days until the James Carville plunge comes due. But today, Donald Trump's approval rating is back up a point to 51%, net +4. and right track is back up to 45, up from 43 just 2 days ago. Incredible. Not a plunge, absolutely incredible. And what we're going to look at is the Democrat Party. Chuck Schumer specifically, because people have been talking a lot about where he stands as the new leader of the party and whether he should step aside and whether somebody else should step in. And we actually have some numbers about that, fresh numbers, one overnight result back. We'll take a look at that. And a really great article that goes over the status of the Democrat Party and where they stand, because it is not looking good. It's absolutely not looking good. This is an article about the state of the Democrat Party, and it's from Politico, who contracted USAIDs, but it's, I think, pretty fair. Maybe they fixed themselves. Maybe they're worried. But we dug into the polls. Democrats in Congress should be very afraid. And I agree with that assessment. As Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer knows better than anyone, the Democrat base is pissed off, and not just a little. We're going to quantify that. The intensity of the anger roiling the party is at a historic level, suggesting a breach between congressional Democrats and the party grassroots so severe that it could reshape the 2026 primary election season. Yeah, that's true. We haven't really seen primaries. We haven't really seen what's going to happen in all these districts. Is the establishment going to go to war with these radical upstarts? I think it's a very good question. Congressional Democrats have typically enjoyed higher popularity with their voting base than their Republican counterparts. Yeah, true. But the trauma of the 2024 presidential election defeat appears to have ruptured that relationship. A review of well, we've hit a snag. A review of Quinnipiac University's annual first quarter congressional polling reveals that for the first time in the poll's history, congressional Democrats are now underwater with their own voters in approval ratings. Now, it is Quinnipiac, and they are really horrible. They've been better recently from a horse race perspective, but for some reason, their approval numbers, Trump, Democrat, Biden, are always just like 10 to 15 points lower than mine. I just don't understand it. Something to do with their methodology and who they're reaching. I really don't know. But it's inexorable. They had Joe Biden down to 33%. I think the lowest we ever had him was they might have hit him at 30. The lowest we ever had Joe Biden was 37 points. Just 40% of Democrats approve of the job performance of congressional Democrats compared to 49% who disapprove. So underwater 9. Let's keep that in our head. That's a dramatic change from this time last year when 75% of Democrats approved compared to just 21% who disapproved. Seems high, but I believe it. Okay. The Democratic-based disillusionment runs so deep that it's eerily reminiscent of Republican grassroots sentiments in the period leading up to Donald Trump's takeover of the Republican Party. The numbers are clear. No longer satisfied with the status quo in their party, the Democrats are on the verge of a Tea Party-style intraparty revolt. I love the use of the word revolt. So the framing here isn't like, well, how I've been framing it, a Democrat civil war. This is like, no, the establishment failed and the crazies are coming for them. That's how this is framed. This is framed like, hey, there's going to be problems. Jasmine Crockett and AOC are out there. The party is going to change. Democrat approval data is unlike any in recent history, and it isn't a case of bitter, disaffected partisans reacting to a loss in the last election. The first time Democrats lost an election to Donald Trump, their congressional approval ratings within the party actually ticked up. Yeah, we saw that too. As Democratic base voters, that's kind of the weird thing. Because even when Joe Biden failed in that debate, his approval rating among Democrats actually went up. It was kind of weird. And he actually tightened the 2024 race in the polling. And I kind of thought, my explanation at the time was, well, the few objective Democrats who are like, Joe Biden's falling downstairs, he can barely form a sentence, he's talking about corn pop, we can't vote for this guy. All of a sudden are like, oh man, Trump actually might win this. And they lost whatever objectivity it is. Like, no, we got to circle the wagons. We got to get this guy through no matter what. Can't let the orange man in. And now he's in. That's the problem, right? It's like, well, there's no reason to circle the wagons now. It's like they've been untethered, or actually for the first time able to say, no, these guys suck. They've been utterly defeated. It must be cathartic for them. I don't know. Democratic approval. The first time Democrats. No, we read all that. Same phenomenon surfaced among Republicans in 2021 when, despite Trump's defeat and the subsequent chaos of January 6th, Republican voters remained generally positive regarding their views on the congressional GOP. I guess that's fair. They certainly got pissed off at a lot of Republican leaders, like Mike Pence. His approval rating plunged. Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell. The closest partisan parallel to the level of anger currently gripping Democratic voters would be roughly a decade ago when Republican political unknown David Brat topped House Majority Leader Eric Cantor in a shocking 2014 primary upset. 2 years later, Trump tore through a crowded field of accomplished establishment candidates and forever upended Republican politics. Yeah, that's how it happened. Despite the rest of energy in the party's progressive wing, the Democratic discontent does not seem to be centered around a desire to pull the party to the left or right. I don't know about that. I think everybody's sort of like, it's like King of the Hill. Everybody's grappling to fill the leadership vacuum left by the flagging Joe Biden. Democrats cannot seem to agree on which direction the party should move in. In recent Gallup polling, we'll look at that, found that 45% wanted the party to become more moderate, while 29% felt it should be more liberal, and 22% wanted it to stay the same. So yeah, that Gallup polling is interesting. We'll compare it to ours. Instead, the numbers suggest that the fury is at least partly fueled by the Democrat base's dissatisfaction with congressional leadership, their relatively conciliatory approach to Trump this time around, and their inability to stop him. So we did find in polling that we showed on Monday that Democrats were not happy with the Democrat reaction to Donald Trump's speech. Only 23% said excellent, only 47% said excellent or good. And I think mid-20s said poor. So that was not glowing review. They didn't like what they saw. And obviously that wasn't a very conciliatory approach, but they still didn't like it. And their inability to stop him. Recent polls from CNN and Data for Progress both found supermajorities of Democrat voters calling for the party's congressional leadership to do more to oppose the president. Well, that's a ubiquitous sentiment. A sentiment that sparked a fierce backlash against Schumer's recent move to facilitate the GOP's passage of a continuing resolution funding the government. Yeah, so a lot of people got mad. Reddit got mad. AOC got mad. She melted down on TikTok about how Schumer shouldn't have let that happen. They should have shut the government down. And I think Schumer's smart. I think Schumer knew if they shut the government down that Doge would have gone hog wild and they would have figured out a way to turn it against the Democrats. And like we've been saying, Republicans have been clamoring for a shutdown for a long time. I think it's almost like Republican voters know that the Democrats use it against weak-willed and spineless Republicans. And it's like, let's prove them wrong. Historic precedent suggests it would be extremely unusual for this kind of dissatisfaction to persist without any major changes in the party, especially because these voters don't have anywhere else to go. Third parties continue to see their vote shares decline, and polarization between the two major parties continues to rise. We've been covering that. We watched as RFK started at 12% in the polling. Actually, I think he got up to like 15% in one of our matchups. And it just kept ticking down and down and down. This is political Armageddon. No room for a third party, meaning that the odds of these disaffected Democrats voting for non-Democratic candidates are extremely low. Well, who they're up against is the couch. That's who the Democrats' biggest opponent is right now. People who are just upset. You can only call them Hitler for so long. And at the end of the day, I think they're going to see through. When you see these arguments on Twitter, almost ubiquitously, these hyperbolic Democrat arguments about how Donald Trump's in there ripping things apart, there's absolutely no acknowledgement of the fact that these things have created a financially unsustainable debt spiral that's destroying the country. You know, when Jojo from Jurors says, wow, we're just stealing money out of the mouths of our kids' lunch programs because we shut the Department of Education down or whatever, it's like, no acknowledgement of the fact that basically Biden spent $10 trillion on nothing, that we have nothing to show for that. So this ratchets up pressure in the 2026 primary election season. Political science literature suggests that partisans angry enough to have an opinion on the party leadership are also the likeliest to show up and vote Democrats anyways. So it's not clear that the party will incur a turnout penalty as a result. I don't know. I think they will. I think the turnout penalty might be Act Blue disappearing. Instead, these numbers open the door to a potentially bruising string of primaries in both the House and the Senate. 13 Democratic-held Senate seats up for re-election this year, many of them involving veteran senators in the bluest states. Yeah, it's not a good map for Democrats. Raising the prospect of a stream of younger, insurgent candidates more closely aligned with the party base, similar to what the GOP has contended with for over the past 15 years. So it's like younger, insurgent. They say it's not necessarily about moderate versus radical. And certainly the establishment in the Democrat Party is radical. I mean, Schumer is radical. I guess you could paint him as a moderate compared to AOC or Bernie or something, or Jasmine Crockett or whoever. Jamie Raskin or whoever. But, I mean, more closely aligns with the party's base. I don't think that's fair. Only 60% of Democrats strongly disapprove of Trump. So I don't know if it's fair to say that the party's base is radical. The party's base hasn't had any choice but to vote for radicals. A handful of liberal groups have already called for Chuck Schumer to step down as party leader after voting last week for a GOP stopgap funding bill. Democratic House members have also felt the sting of grassroots rage in recent days at town halls marked by testy exchanges. Yeah, I think this is a good article. I think it's pretty fair, and I think it's correct. There's going to be some problems with the primaries. I think Chuck Schumer's done. Even if his favorability rates recover, I think the optics, the party leadership, let me rephrase that. The people who aspire to be leaders of the party just universally can't seem to tolerate what Trump's doing to the federal government. And we can conjecture about why that is. But the fact that what Chuck Schumer did appeared to be helping Trump, that's an unforgivable sin. That's like heresy. He's going to be ostracized from the cult. So let's look at some polling. I'm sorry, that was a long article. I don't usually cover all of them, but I thought it was really good. It really framed the whole situation for them. This is from a year ago, 2024, before the election, before Biden was out. And we did a favorability rating for all the leaders in Congress. Mike Johnson, 39%, net plus 7. Hakeem Jeffries, 29%. Underwater, what is that? 3141. Underwater, what is that? 12. Look at Mitch McConnell. This is horrifying. I don't understand why this guy keeps getting voted in. Very favorable, 4%. Somewhat favorable, 14%. He's the lowest one here. Only 18% favorability rating. That's ridiculous. Basically, he's at 72% unfavorable. Like, everybody hates him. Look at his Republican favorability rating, 23%. His Democrat favorability is 14. So he's only doing 9 points better with Republicans. That's astounding. Everybody hates this guy. His Republican unfavorable rating is 67%. Two-thirds of Republicans don't like Mitch McConnell. Anyways, I'm sorry. I digress. Here we are. Chuck Schumer, 33% favorable, 53%. Underwater, 20. But look at his Democrat. That's what we're looking at, the Democrat numbers. 56%. So how is that? Well, Donald Trump has an 82% Republican job approval rating today. The favorability numbers would be similar. The lowest I think I recall Trump ever having among Republicans since he was elected the first term was 75%. He's had lower strong approval. I think it's gotten into the high 30s. But this is nowhere near Trump numbers. This is about where Kevin McCarthy was at after 2022. That's what, like, really where it's at. You know, a lot of people don't know. They don't really like him. They don't hate him though. It's a majority favorable rating, but only 30% vary. And I looked farther back, and it fluctuated, but it's basically always been about 56% because he's basically always been there, right? Yeah, so I would say Democrats were weakly positive to ambivalent. But then we get to November after the election, and here's where things start to hit a snag. Which political party currently has better leadership, Democrats or Republicans? And 48% say Republicans, 38% say Democrats. Republicans have a 10-point advantage there, but I mean, this is after a mandate election. Republicans have always had a disadvantage here, and the fact that they're winning, I guess, is incredible, but only by 10, right? And Republicans, 87% say Republicans are better leaders, but 78% of Democrats. So there's a huge crossover advantage there. And independents say Republican by 20 points because they're objectively acknowledging that Republicans did a good job. But which current leader is better for the Democrat Party? And we put Kamala Harris in there because, highest favorability. She just lost, but she ran and got a lot of attention. 15% Joe Biden, 31% Kamala Harris, 7% Chuck Schumer. This stings. 12% Hakeem Jeffries. That's all voters. But looking at Democrats, he still is last. 54% of Democrats say Vice President Kamala Harris. So that's scary for them because I don't think she's just going to come back out of nowhere. Like, what is she going to do in 4 years that's actually going to convince anybody to vote for her that didn't last time? People are going to look at Trump and say, oh, he did some stuff. Like, even if Trump comes out of the next 4 years and it's been like a mix of positive and negative and is chaotic and stuff like that, like Kamala Harris has no ability to do anything over the next 4 years, I think, to convince people she's a better candidate than she was before. And I don't think, I don't know. I assume that JD Vance will look good in comparison. 20% Joe Biden. That's good because I hear Joe Biden is interested in coming back to the political stage. I mean, this 20% tells me that Democrats don't really want him to. But again, 5% Chuck Schumer. That's a really low number. So he's taking the brunt of this. And, they got spanked in the Senate. Like, the Republicans should have gotten more seats, but it was still a big loss. and 11%. Like, people don't even know who Hakeem Jeffries is. And he beats Schumer by 2x among Democrats. That's like, oh, that's rough. Young people, he does better with, like, look at the older ones. They like Hakeem Jeffries way better than Schumer. People that have been around who actually know who Schumer is. So that's not great. But here's the polling I wanted to talk about. This is new. This is one night of 3 nights. This is a questions that we put in the field yesterday, and I'll have to interpret it for you. But we knew that this was going to be about Schumer, and we're trying to get the results out. So this is like N equals 372, large margin of error. But I think what we'll find is they're going to be directionally correct. These numbers are usually like somewhat okay. And look at this. Democrat favorability of Schumer, lower, very favorable, but overall it's 60%, up from 56. That's not what you've heard in the news. What you've heard is everybody hates him. They want him gone. They want him to resign. And it's all based on a Quinnipiac poll. Isn't that a psyop? Quinnipiac, who routinely has lower favorability ratings for literally everybody, Republican and Democrat alike, cherry-picked to create a story clearing the old guard to make way for insurgents, younger insurgent candidates that they say are going to, be at these primaries and be the new face of the party. I don't know. I kind of feel like Politico is leaning into this one because like my numbers here, and listen, maybe they won't hold up. Maybe at the end of this, he'll be a 50%, but he went up. Like, he went up. How about Schumer's handling of the spending bill? 64% of likely voters say, yeah, sure, I approve of that. Government didn't shut down. 67%, 2/3 of Democrats approve. Again, large margin of error, might not come out exactly correct. It's going to be directionally correct. It'll be in the 60s, I guarantee you. 60% of Democrats approve of the way that Schumer handled the spending bill. So the public opinion, the Democrats I poll, do not match ubiquitously what is in the headlines. The mainstream media is carrying water for radicals in the Democrat Party. That's what's happening right now. Democrats, is Schumer a valuable leader, or should we get rid of Schumer? 50% valuable leader, 41% get rid of Schumer. Again, tight, but not an overwhelming vote of like no confidence. Should the Democrat Party be more moderate or more liberal? 52% say more moderate, a majority. 52%, only 37% say more liberal. Those numbers actually kind of tie to Gallup. Maybe we should look at the Gallup numbers. So I thought that was cool to be able to give you these preview numbers. These will come out next week. But what we have released already is this. The GOP is viewed more favorably than Democrats. Not a surprise, I guess, but 44%, actually, I think it rounds down to 43% when you use the trailing, the decimals. 43% favorable impression of the Democrat Party among all likely voters, and 54% unfavorable. So like underwater 10. Republican Party, 50% favorable, 48, so +2. So Republicans are doing 12 points better there. But among Democrats, I thought that Democrat approval of the Democrat Party was the lowest it's ever been. Well, I see 72% favorable among Democrats, 26% unfavorable. Really good. Not as good as Republicans view Republicans right now. That is 83%. But, directionally, okay, it's like in the teens, worse than the Republicans look at Republicans. But, yeah, I'm just not seeing the same story. I think Democrats are like moderately less interested in their party than they were before. I think they want it to moderate on average. They kind of like what Schumer did. They don't hate Schumer like everybody says. But I guess the establishment wants to clear the dead wood. Let's look at what Gallup says. More Democrats favor party moderation than in the past. So our numbers are going to match Gallup a hell of a lot more than they're going to match Quinnipiac. I can tell you that right now. Plurality of Republicans favor status quo for their party. Fewer say it should be more conservative. Well, it's tough to define conservative if you're a MAGA person right now, because I don't think MAGA is conservative. But in the wake of the 2024 election and Donald Trump's inauguration for a second term as president, a plurality of Democrats would like their party to become more moderate, while a similar plurality of Republicans favor the status quo for their party. Well, I found that a majority of Democrats favor moderation. I think, give it 2 more days. Both parties' groups' preferences have shifted significantly since 2021. At the start of Joe Biden's presidency, the last time Gallup measured opinions on this question, support for a more moderate Democrat party among Democrats and Democrat-leaning independents has grown by 11 percentage points to 45%. So it was only 34%. Wow. That's interesting. They didn't want to moderate when Joe Biden won and when he was in office. And when he was objectively doing non-moderate things. But who can even define what a moderate Democrat is anymore? I don't know. At the same time, Democrat and Democrat leaners' desire for a more liberal party has declined 5 points to 29%. So we hit it in the 30s, I think is where it'll come out. And preferences for no change have fallen 9 points to 22. So that's like if you add our not sures, we don't have a no change result in there. So it's not apples to apples, but I think it's directionally pretty close. Meanwhile, Republicans and Republican-leaning independents support for the GOP to stay in the same ideology up 9 points to 43%. Well, that's also kind of low. But a desire for a more conservative party is down 12 points to 28%. I don't know who that helps other than this is probably not good for DeSantis, because I think if he runs, it's going to be on, well, Trump's not conservative enough. If you've learned something, please follow us at rasmussenreports.com, Rasmussen_poll at Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Mark_R_Mitchell at Twitter. And thanks for watching.